Good stewards don't play Russian roulette with God. When I was a child, the Aesop fables were still very popular children's stories. My favorite was The Tortoise and the Hare. A bunny challenged a turtle to a race, and of course, the rabbit was far faster than the turtle. But the rabbit was also lazy, took naps along the race, played a bunch, but the tortoise just kept going and going and going and going. And of course, the tortoise won. And the moral of the story was perseverance pays. And it does with all of us. We're supposed to keep at what Jesus tells us to do. Later in life, I learned to like another of Aesop's fables. This one was about a man and a lion. The man kept telling the lion that men, people, were stronger than lions. And the lion kept saying, yeah, that's silly. Lions are certainly stronger than people. But the man kept insisting that people were stronger than lions, and finally he took the lion to show him a statue, and the statue was of a man ripping a lion to pieces with his bare hands. And the man said, see? And the lion said, that's even sillier. It's a statue. A man made that statue. And of course, the moral of that story is all of us tend to paint life the way we want it to be, not necessarily the way it is. And that's pretty much the story, the moral of the story of today's gospel passage. This is a remarkable passage. It is a short and complete salvation history. It tells the entire history of salvation. A landowner has a vineyard. He gets tenants to take care of it for him. He goes off. When he comes back, it's harvest time, and he asks the tenants to give him his share of the grapes. And he sends several of his servants to deliver the message. Well, the tenants beat up some and kill one of them. But the owner has remarkable patience and compassion. He sends more. And the tenants do the same thing. They beat up some and they kill one. And then the owner says, look, I'm going to send my son. Surely they'll respect my son. Well, the tenants are thinking of a law back then in Jewish law, squatters' rights, that if we could stay on this land just one more year, it could be ours. So let's kill the heir, and they kill the son. Now, the landowner is God. The tenants are the ancient Jews, primarily. He's speaking to the chief priest and the Pharisees. The representatives that the landowner sends, they're all the different prophets that the Jews rejected. Some of them they killed. And the Son is, of course, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The moral of that story is much like the moral of that second Aesop fable. We see things the way we want to, not necessarily the way we are. And we sometimes see God as perfectly merciful. Mercy, 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 mercy. And he is. I've told you all the time, he's a pussycat when it comes to mercy. But he tells us in the end of the story, there's a breaking point. There's a breaking point, a place where we impose upon God that he's got to resort to justice. And he does here. we're told the tenant farmers experienced a wretched death. And then the end of the story, the vineyard is given to the new covenant people, to us. It's given to others. And that's something we have to think about all the time, because I think that we tend, consciously or not, to think we can get away with anything. God is so merciful, He is going to take care of us no matter what we do. Well, as I say, God is incredibly merciful. His mercy is so wide, so deep, we can't imagine it. But there is justice. Jesus tells us that He is meek and humble of heart. But He's also the guy who made a whip out of cords and went into the temple and beat up on and drove out the money changers in the temple. Jesus says, look, you who are tired, come to me and I will give you rest. But He's also the guy who said to those who didn't take care of the needy, hey, you're going to wind up burning forever. So let's not live on the edge. Let's do what God tells us to do as often, as frequently as we can. Here's a modern fable. Al was a mess of contradictions. He was actually a pretty good husband and father. He did well in his family. But he was also a bigot. He discriminated against blacks and Muslims. Al went to Mass, but kind of when he felt like it. If he was just feeling lazy, that was enough excuse not to go. He prayed, but sometimes days, weeks, months went by, and he did not pray. In times of great need, for example, right after Hurricane Katrina, he was a Trojan. Worked and worked and worked and worked to help people. But most of the time, nothing. No service outside of home. Never involved in his life in a church ministry. Never involved in a lay charity. Years, literally years went by, and he did no service outside his home. And when it came to what Jesus wants us to do, sacrificial giving of our money to the church and charity, he gave under 1% of his income to church and charity. He made $60,000 a year, he gave $500, under 1%. He died at 92, took that long, slow walk to the pearly gates, thinking about what's going to happen when I get there. And when he got there, he asked the important question, Jesus, may I please come in? And Jesus, as always, said, well, let me check the record. And a few minutes later, Jesus came back and said, Al, you know, I am incredibly merciful. I'd love an A. But you get a B, you come in. You get a C, you come in. You get a D, you come in. You get a D minus, you come in. I'll accept, because of my great mercy and compassion, just a passing grade. But Al, you got a 69. You got an F plus. Yeah, you did quite a few good things in your life, but you got an F. And Al said, well, Lord, go back and look again. Maybe you can find one more or two more good things that I did get me over the top. And Jesus said, Al, you know what you've been doing all of your life? You've been playing spiritual Russian roulette. It's like you think that there are 5 mercy bullets in my revolver and only 1 justice bullet. In all of your life, you kept pulling the trigger and pulling the trigger and pulling the trigger, knowing that you were skating on literally thin ice. Yeah, let's talk about it, but it is an F. My sisters and brothers, we want to do better than Al. We don't want to go through our entire life thinking, well, I'm close enough. Al's motto in life was, what I'm doing is good enough. Well, unless we're doing what Jesus Christ tells us, it may very well not be good enough. So let's on a regular basis examine our consciences and determine, am I getting a good grade? Give God great glory and credit because you don't need to get an A. But we all have to get a passing grade. My sisters and brothers, we are all called to be good stewards. And good stewards don't play Russian roulette with God.